This week, we welcome Renee Tarun, Deputy CISO at Fortinet, to discuss her book, Fight Fire with Fire, Proactive Cybersecurity Strategies for Today's Leaders. In the Leadership and Communications section, CISOs approach the board with precision, simplicity. Layoffs taught me to never make 3 powerful leadership mistakes, 6 zero trust myths and misconceptions, and more. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. Cyber risk and compliance automation is finally here. Legacy GRC systems cannot support the powerful, real-time automation and oversight that organizations require to take risks that matter to succeed. CyberSec continuous control automation ingests data from the IT GRC stack to update controls against regulatory requirements and risks in real time, delivering insights and visibility. See how members of the Fortune 500 are saving millions annually by visiting securityweekly.com/cybersec. People require access from anywhere to resources everywhere, but legacy security is ill-equipped for today's hybrid organization. Appgate SDP delivers zero trust network access for hybrid workforces and workloads, empowering trusted users with secure, frictionless connections to only what they need. Make your attack surface invisible and reduce time to provision by 91% with Appgate SDP, a leader in the 2021 Forrester ZTNA New Wave. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Appgate. We're proud to announce CISO Stories, a new podcast series in partnership with Cybersecurity Collaborative and Cyber Reason. CISO Stories features the candid perspectives and experiences of frontline senior security executives and dives deep into timely security topics. CISO Stories is hosted by Todd Fitzgerald, VP of Cybersecurity Strategy at Cybersecurity Collaborative, and Sam Curry, Chief Product and Security Officer at Cyber Reason. Listen weekly as they speak with extraordinary CISOs by visiting securityweekly.com/CSP.
Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 237, recorded October 25th, 2021. I am your host, Matt Alderman, here in Colorado. Joining remotely are my co-hosts. First, Mr. Jason Albuquerque. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, Matt. Good weekend. Patriots actually won a game, and my son and I got to go see it. So we had a great Sunday.
That's awesome when you can get out and watch a game and watch your team actually win. We'll get to that in a second. Also joining Mr. Ben Carr. Welcome, Ben. You're muted, Ben.
Well, it helps if I take that off, doesn't it? How's it going, Matt?
Good. That's 2 weeks in a row for you. I'm going to have to teach you how to use the mute button.
So
it's because I put my Patriots hat on, I think.
The comments I said had to be muted.
Funny. InfoSec World 2021 is proud to announce its keynote lineup for this year's event. Hear from Robert Herjavec, plus heads of security at the NFL, TikTok, U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Stanford University, and more. Plus, Security Weekly listeners save 20% on digital pass registration. Visit securityweekly.com/ISW 2021 to register now. Security Weekly Unlocked will be held in person, yes, still in person, this December 5th through 7th at the Hilton Lake Buena Vista. Keynotes from Melissa Miller, John Strand, Leslie Carhart, and Dave Kennedy. Visit securityweekly.com/unlock to register and check out our rockstar lineup. This segment is sponsored by Fortinet. To learn more, please visit securityweekly.com/Fortinet. Renee Tarun is Deputy CISO at Fortinet. Renee has over 20 years experience in the cybersecurity and information technology fields with leadership experience in development and engineering, operations, strategy, policy, and portfolio management across the intelligence community, law enforcement, and private industry. She co-authored the children's book, CyberSafe, A Dog's Guide to Internet Security. She was also a contributor to the book Digital Big Bang. Prior to joining Fortinet, she served as special assistant to the Director, National Security Agency for Cyber and Director of NSA's Cyber Task Force. Renee, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me today.
You're welcome. I think this is a very interesting topic. You and a few co-authors have written a book around proactive security strategies for security leaders. And before we get into kind of the structure of the book, I'm curious, give us the background on why you wrote the book. And I also want to know the bios of some of your co-authors.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we look at today's headlines and you're seeing cyber attacks and successful cyber attacks happening more and more frequently. And so the premise for the book is really to give, IT and cyber leaders today, some actionable intelligence that they can use to be proactive in helping their cyber defense. And so the title is, Fight Fire with Fire, Proactive Strategies for Today's Cyber Leaders. And so the focus is being able to help organizations kind of transition, because a lot of organizations still find themselves in reactive mode, and some of the things that the techniques and tactics they've been using ultimately tend to fall short in protecting their systems and data. So it really gives them some knowledge from real life experience from people that have had decades of experience, whether that's in the private sector or even in the government, knowledgeable and actionable things that they can do to help, be proactive and help, secure their systems and data. And the premise for some of the authors, they're all female contributors. And the second purpose of the book is really to promote diversity, and the fact that there are a lot of women cyber leaders out there. We are not unicorns. We do exist. And we also come from different walks of life, from different backgrounds. Some of our contributors are, chief risk officers. Some are venture capitalists. Some are actually industry analysts. And then there are also their CISOs and IT leaders, people in charge of architecture and engineering. And the book actually promotes, their bios in there that also shows you that, not everybody came into the cyber world from the same path. Some started in finance and accounting. And so we want to be able to promote the book, not only that it's good actionable intelligence for cyber leaders, but also to help promote, getting more diversity in the cyber realm, because we all know we have that skills gap that we're all dealing with. And obviously, helping promote more diversity will help, get more people interested in coming into that cyber field.
Yeah, we agree, because we talk about it a lot on the show, the skills gap and how to bring folks into the cybersecurity market, right? And so I think this is a great way to highlight not only women in the diverse leaders we have in the security industry, but also their backgrounds and how they got here, because we talk about this in the different skills gaps articles that we cover in the second segment of the show. Very important to be able to find the way to bring the people in here. So I think this book is a great way to highlight a lot of that.
Absolutely.
Now, let's talk about the structure of the book. So when you think about proactive strategies, give us an outline of how did you tackle the strategies? Give us an outline for the book, and then we can maybe get into some key areas that are really important for the audience to take away from this interview.
Yeah, a lot of people, when they hear fight fire with fire, a lot of times they think that means hack back or, going back after your adversaries. And that's definitely not what the book is promoting. But what is promoting is the fact that, a lot of times our adversaries are using things like automation and artificial intelligence against us. So one of the things the book does promote is leveraging the same type of capabilities and technologies in our defensive strategies as well. The way the book is actually lined is, it really brings to light that there is no silver bullet. There's no one magic tactic that's going to, stop or prevent a breach from happening. But what it does outline is that it really takes a three-pronged approach, and that requires people, processes, and technology. You can have some of the best technologies in the world, but if it's not configured correctly or it's not installed, not maintained, it can be bypassed, as well as human error. Human error is also one of the leading causes of breaches, as well as misconfigurations. And so, again, the book really outlines, from a people perspective, things of, one of the things we just talked about, how do you get, more skilled and diverse workforce, into organizations? How do you communicate to the board? As well as from a process perspective, how do you address things like we're seeing more attacks being focused on the supply chain? How do you ensure you're doing the proper DevSecOps practices, as well as from a technology perspective? How are you doing things? How you build that end-to-end security from a technology perspective.
So let's dig into a couple of those. So first, I have to say that means zero trust and XDR are not silver bullet solutions. So that's good. We cleared that up.
But it's important part of that strategy. It's part of that layered defense approach. Definitely important part, but it's not a single solution. You still need people and processes as well.
Yeah, exactly right. So let's dig into the people part. We talked a little bit about diversity and are there specific tips in here around attracting the right skill sets for an organization? Kind of how deep did you get into this topic, and any key tips that we should extract out of the book?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it talks about creating organizations that are inclusive. Studies have shown that employees are actually desire employers that have inclusive work environments, but also creating environments where employees are allowed to grow and mature, increase their skill sets. Organizations where they feel appreciated, for their work. So the book really outlines, what are some of the tactics and techniques and what our employees are looking for, as well as, how can you go about, attracting and retaining some of those employees, whether that's setting up mentoring programs, shadowing programs, or, doing scholarships for service, those types of things. What are some of those things that not only can, help you attract some of those next generation workforce, but also how do you retain them? How do you, once you get them into those cyber positions and get them into your organization, how can you maintain them?
I know Jason has thoughts here.
Yeah, no, one of the things that I love about looking at the table of contents, and I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to buy this book as soon as we get off this podcast so I can start reading. But I love the fact that you're taking strategies to bring cybersecurity leaders to that strategic seat at the table, right? They're in the first part, which is people. You talk about from technologist to strategist. You talk about, in part 2, from the enforcer to the strategic partner. I love the fact that you're driving those leadership and enablement mentalities into the book, so that way we're helping build those next business leaders who can become strategic CISOs or chief risk officers and really empower the business to be seen as an enabler. Can you talk a little bit about some of the strategies that the leaders you worked with to write these chapters, leveraged influence, leverage leadership skills, leverage business skills to really gain that trust and influence to make strategic decisions?
Yeah, because again, some of our leaders even came from the government where, they face some of those same challenges. But when you look at the role of the CISO, it's definitely changing. Just being a technologist is no longer, is enough. You really have to be seen as that business partner because, IT and security, they're costs of doing business. They're not necessarily revenue generators. And so for an organization, you have to, like you said, you really have to be seen as that enabler. And so a lot of it is building those partnerships and building those relationships. And like you said, absolutely, it requires building that trust. The IT and security teams can't be that department of no. So you really need to have the seat at that table, and so that you're not an afterthought. A lot of times what happens, organizations, they have, their priorities, and a lot of it is business and performance oriented, driving towards user experiences and getting things, deployed as quickly as human possible, because that's what generates the revenue. And so And the book really focuses on, what are some of those challenges of, how do you break into those conversations? How can you go and be seen as that partner? And going out there and kind of building those relationships with, the different organizations, the business units or the lines of business within your organization. And making them also understand a little bit and communicating the risk and what that risk can mean to the overall organization as well as to the business. You can deploy the latest and greatest application out there, but if it's not built securely, the damage not only from a revenue perspective, but to your brand, to your reputation, and those costs can not necessarily be measured. And sometimes you can't even recover from those type of damages. And so it's really kind of now also explaining to the risk and why the security teams and the IT teams there are there to help you. It's there to help you, before something bad does happen.
Yeah. And I
Renee,
look at that as kind of that first step, right? Because once you build the influence, once you build the trust, and once you have those strategic relationships, it enables you to influence things like addressing the skills and diversity gap within the workforce, right? And all of these other items in here, I feel the foundation of that success is based upon, you know, that level of trust and relationship building, and getting that seat at the table to make those strategic decisions and becoming an enabler. I just think it's so important. That's why I focused on that.
Right, and it also means you've got to be a good communicator, and you got to be that good collaborator. And it also means that you just can't be talking technology, because a lot of times just talking the tech talk doesn't necessarily resonate. It doesn't, make an impact. So also got to be able to translate how some of that technology from a strategy perspective is really seen as that business enablement.
So Renee, when I look at how you broke out the table of contents, I love the fact that you're keeping to the triad, right? People, process, technology. And I'm wondering, if there was a method to the madness of, the order that you put those in, and how you see the order of application, and how, as you're building out a program, and for CISOs who are, maybe new at it, or new to a company, like where do you start? Is there an alignment there? Is there, a chicken and the egg kind of scenario, or is there really a place to start from, that triad of people, process, and technology?
I mean, I think it's really focused on really starting with that triad. In any organization, you can't be successful without your people. And so building those relationships is critical, because that's when it's going to separate the good from the bad and from the ugly. Is how well you can build those relationships and build your networking, because you can only be successful as how well you can partner and relationship. The technology, it is what it is. That can be used at any time. But being able to have the right people and the right processes in place, because at the end of the day, again, like I said earlier, if the technology is not implemented correctly, or it's misconfigured, or you don't have the right technology in place, yes, that can also lead to your demise. But ultimately, if you don't have those relationships, because, as a CISO, you don't know what technology you need to be bringing into your organization if you don't understand what the business demands. Where is, from a strategy, from an organizational perspective, where the organization is trying to go. Because again, as an IT, as a security person, you kind of want to be help driving that strategy, and ensuring that, you're making sure organizations are doing it effectively and securely as possible.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I align with that as well. I just wanted to see where you came out on that, and glad to see that that's your thesis.
Because when I look at the three processes that you mentioned, right? Think supply chain, think DevOps, and think NOC and SOC. Those aren't just process areas. Those are people areas, because you are now working with other groups that are outside of the security team. You're working with procurement and legal when it comes to supply chain. You're working with the development teams that are probably in a completely different department. You're working across the IT and the security team. So those three processes that you mentioned early on are also heavy on the people relationship side, which you have to build those relationships in order to build the right processes to implement before you even think about technology, right, Renee?
Absolutely. And then once you have those people and processes down, when you look at things like blending the NOC and SOC, technology plays an important role in that. Not only helping the organizations, be effective in their processes. So again, it's kind of why it's the trifecta. Those three, key elements are essential to any organization's success when it comes from the security and IT management.
Yes. Now, when we think technology, I think here's the challenge for most CISOs. Too many vendors, too many products, too many gaps in the integration. Where do you kind of walk people through strategy around technology? Because I think this is a real big challenge for a lot of CISOs, especially people that are either starting new or are coming into an organization and they have to figure out how to integrate all this stuff together. What were some of the strategies on the technology side?
And first and foremost, for a lot of organizations, on average, organizations are around about 47 different point solutions. And we've seen over time and time again that, it's not effective, it's not cost effective, and it actually becomes a maintenance nightmare. And especially, like we said earlier, we're still all battling the skills gap, having enough skilled resources to run and integrate all this stuff. And so what you're seeing is it's more organizations need to kind of go more to a platform approach where all of your technologies work and play well together and they're integrated. Because what ends up happening is all these different point solutions, they have their different management consoles, give you different visibility. Now, a lot of these GUIs don't work together. They don't collaborate. They don't share information. So now you got to go to all these different individual management consoles. And it absolutely makes it a nightmare for the security teams. Not to mention, it also degrades your time to being effective at doing, monitoring, detection, and response, which is critical in our field. You can't be doing things at human speed. You really need to be doing things at automated. And what happens when these different technologies, they don't integrate and work well together? Ultimately, you lack in speed, your integration, performance, and it also increases your overall cost to manage. And so a lot of organizations, we're looking now to going to more of a platform approach where you have an open API framework where the technologies can work together. And also, as you bring into a technology into your organization, you shouldn't have to rip and replace the technologies you already had, because a lot of organizations don't have unlimited budgets. And so when you've already made your investments and you have a solution, you're working and your staff likes it, then you need to be able to incorporate technologies that can work and play well with your existing infrastructure. And also, continue to build on that. But for a lot of organizations, it's coming down to trying to reduce complexity. That complexity can really be an Achilles heel for a lot of organizations. And so a lot of organizations are looking to really reduce the number of vendors they have within their organizations, and really change into an approach where it's creating those strategic partnerships with some of your key partners. Because at the end of the day, you have tons of vendors that'll come in, drop technology off in your environments. But when the things hit the proverbial fan, which in our field, it normally always does at some point or another. So you really want to have those strategic partners that are going to be there, that you can pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm seeing something unusual happening on my network. Can you help me? Or I've got this problem. I've got this performance problem going on, or I have a new business initiative that I need to help make sure that I'm secure and that I've got the network performance. And so it's really kind of building those relationships with, a few good handful of what I call partners. I often joke around with some of my other CISO colleagues. I'm like, if I'm calling you a vendor, that's probably not a good thing, because you're probably not on my favorite list. So it's really kind of building that strategic partnership. And then as organizations are building their strategies for the future, that you have some of those key partners that are sitting you right there by your side, helping you build out your strategy and to make sure that you're doing it the most economical, efficient, and secure way possible.
I know Mr. Albuquerque. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask the question because I was going to hit on chapter 14 eventually, achieving end-to-end security, and everything you just said is on my menu of things you need to have for, that end-to-end security. Now, number one, I am a big fan of having a security fabric, or the platform, like you mentioned, having that integrated ecosystem. I think Matt at one point in our podcast career called me a Fortinet fanboy because of that. I think, if I remember correctly, right, Matt?
Yeah, I think so.
But ultimately, I've been down this road as a practicing CISO, and I will tell you the effectiveness and the efficiencies that I realized, my team realized, my organization realized by going to that fabric approach, that integrated fabric approach, saved money, saved time, heightened effectiveness, heightened our personnel satisfaction because they didn't have to manage 50 tools. And ultimately allowed us to strengthen our posture holistically. So, 100% on board with going to that platform approach. Folks historically wanted to go to those siloed Magic Quadrant leaders. Well, you know what? At the end of the day, I'll take that holistic platform ecosystem over 50-point solutions all day long. And hey, by the way, a partner like Fortinet is up in that quadrant anyway. So win-win-win for me when I built that strategy with my team. And then ultimately the partnership. The partnership is so important to have as a CISO. Absolutely correct when you say, if I'm looking at you like a vendor, you're transactional. You're 100% transactional. I may need to buy a product through you, but when I'm sitting down building my budget and building my strategy for 2022, you're probably not going to have a seat at the table. So having that core trusted partner that you can strategize with, budget with, build your roadmap and your journey out with is an incredible benefit to have and a necessity these days to be successful. So thank you for covering that. It's things that I try to help promote with other security leaders, but having folks evangelize for that is extremely important, and I'm glad it's part of this book.
Absolutely.
Ben might have a little platform play commentary in there as well.
Yeah, you think like I'm a big believer in creating a foundation where you're aligning with your vendors and trying to figure out how to make it functional across the organization, right, and be a true partner for business. And I think it touches back. I'm interested in your comment on this. You had a comment early that security is often seen as a cost center, and I'm wondering if you see that changing or the need for a change. I certainly do. I think it's about time that security leaders, kind of in that fighting fire with fire mentality, after trying to get budget and then a share of the pie and a share of the mindset, like start to become the business leaders and start to offer differentiated value and potentially a competitive advantage against your competition in the marketplace. And so I'm wondering where you see that in this people, process, technology, again, triad, vision, roadmap, how that aligns. Do you think that that's the case? And do you think that we'll get out of that mentality if we're really offering that holistic solution for the organization and the business?
I'm hoping so, because again, you're seeing more and more that security is now getting the seat at the table, where before we were more that afterthought. And especially in the areas like DevSecOps. I mean, I honestly think it should be SecDevOps, putting the security piece first, because I think a lot of organizations can now see that, when you have security at the table, obviously, they can help you define a better, more secure solution, for your organization and for your customers, for your shareholders. And so from that perspective, I think that organizations are now realizing the benefit. I mean, after you go through those steps to build those relationships and build that trust. So I think from my perspective, I think, you're hopefully going to shift from a mindset from a cost of doing business, but a necessary asset that we have to have a part of, our lines of business and part of our organization. Because again, at the end of the day, the IT and security teams, I mean, we can't do it alone. I mean, it requires everybody from the C-suite to the low-level doc to be a part of our efforts and solutions. And so hopefully, that mindset is going to change, that it's not only seen as a cost, but a necessary part of the business to help enable the business to help generate more revenue, more productivity going forward.
Yeah, I think this is a
it
very
does seem to come back
part.
to culture, right? That's something Matt and Jason and I talk about a lot, is it always seems to come back to culture and people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think if we're going to continue to elevate the conversation at the board level, it has to be perceived as a value, not a cost, right? Because otherwise, we're not going to have the seat at the board level discussion either. And we're starting to see that trend of having cybersecurity experts sitting on boards. And so people are starting to embrace that. That means we also have to continue to evolve to provide value, not just be looked at as a cost center.
Well, and just as a mindset, right? I mean, if you're always thought about it as a cost, people don't try to embrace costs. They try to rid themselves of costs, no matter whether it's your personal life or your business. So I think fundamentally that's important for us to figure out how to change that mindset.
Absolutely. And that's also where you're seeing a lot more collaboration between your network and your security teams, like you've had in the past. You can't have networking without security, and vice versa. And so that's why you're seeing a lot more collaboration between those two organizations, and that convergence at play, because again, it helps to be able to do things more effectively and cost effectively.
At the root of it, it's understanding the business, what drives revenue, what the business unit and the stakeholder leaders are motivated by. And once you get ingrained there, you can start innovating as to how security can align and become an enabler. I mean, the first thing I always did in the new organization was try to understand the business, partner with the CFO, partner, if it's a service delivery organization, partner with the services leader. And then from there, you can start working together to figure out how to leverage security as that differentiator and promote it. It's something that as technologists, we're not, sometimes it's out of our comfort zone to go learn the business, but we need to go learn the business.
Can agree more.
Renee, thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
Thank you for having me.
To learn more about proactive cybersecurity strategies you can implement, or to download the book, please visit securityweekly.com/fightfire. We'll take a quick break and then cover the leadership and communications articles for this week.